For 50,000 years, they waited in the dark. Buried deep in a limestone cave in the Philippines were bones that would shatter everything we thought we knew about human migration, evolution, and who we actually are. When scientists finally extracted DNA from those bones in 2019, they found something impossible: a ghost population, an entire branch of humanity that was not supposed to exist. People who carried genetic signatures from species we thought went extinct hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans even left Africa. The DNA did not just challenge one theory, it demolished the entire timeline. And the people living in Southeast Asia today, they are walking around with proof of it inside every cell of their body. If you are enjoying this investigation into human origins, hit subscribe. I cover the latest discoveries in genetics and ancient DNA every week. Now let's talk about what they found in that cave. The Callao cave sits in the northern Philippines, carved into a mountain on the island of Luzon. For decades, archaeologists ignored it. Too remote, too difficult to access. The kind of place where you needed ropes, headlamps, and a willingness to crawl through tight spaces in complete darkness. But in 2007, a team from the University of the Philippines decided to dig anyway. What they pulled from the cave floor seemed ordinary at first. Stone tools, animal bones, the usual debris from ancient human activity. Then they found the teeth. 3 molars worn down from chewing, small, delicate, definitely human, but strange. The shape was wrong. The size did not match any known population in the region. Carbon dating put them at 67,000 years old, which made them the oldest human remains ever found in the Philippines. For 12 years, those teeth sat in a laboratory. While scientists argued about what they meant, some thought they were from Homo sapiens who arrived early. Others suspected they were from a different species entirely. Nobody could agree because nobody had enough evidence. Then, in 2019, the team returned to Callao Cave and found more bones. A femur, hand bones, another set of teeth. This time, they had the technology to do something that was not possible in 2007. They extracted ancient DNA. Recovering DNA from bones that are 50,000 years old is like trying to read a book that has been shredded, soaked in water, left in the sun for 5 decades, and then buried underground. The DNA fragments are tiny. Most are contaminated with bacteria and fungi. The fragments that survive are usually too degraded to sequence. Southeast Asia presented an additional problem. Heat and humidity destroy DNA faster than cold, dry climates. That is why most ancient DNA breakthroughs happen in Europe and Siberia, where freezing temperatures preserve genetic material for tens of thousands of years. In the tropical Philippines, scientists expected to find nothing. They were wrong. The DNA inside those Callao cave bones was fragmented, yes. Degraded, absolutely. But it was there. When the sequencing results came back, the lab fell silent. The bones belonged to a species no one had ever seen before. Not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthal, not Denisovan. Something else entirely. The researchers named them Homo luzonensis, after the island where they were found. Here is where it gets strange. Homo luzonensis had a combination of features that should not exist together. Their teeth were small and simple, like modern humans. Their finger and toe bones were curved, as if they still climbed trees. Their femur was thick and robust, built for walking long distances. But their feet had features seen in Australopithecines, species that went extinct 2 million years ago. It was like finding a car with a modern engine, wooden wheels, and a sail. The scientific community had 2 options. Either this was a bizarre evolutionary fluke, or something fundamental about human evolution was wrong. The DNA suggested the latter. When they compared genetic sequences from Homo luzonensis to modern populations in Southeast Asia, they found matches. Tiny fragments of DNA showed up in people living in the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia today. These weren't Neanderthal genes or Denisovan genes. These were genes from a species that was not supposed to contribute to the modern human gene pool. A species that, according to the prevailing theory, should have died out long before Homo sapiens ever reached the region. But the DNA proved they didn't die out. They interbred, and their descendants are alive right now. To understand why this discovery is so important, you need to understand what scientists believed about human migration before 2019. The story went like this. Modern humans evolved in Africa around 300,000 years ago. They stayed there for most of their history. Then, around 70,000 years ago, a small group left Africa and spread across the world. As they moved through Europe and Asia, they encountered other human species like Neanderthals and Denisovans. They interbred with them, picked up some useful genes for immunity and altitude adaptation, and then those archaic species went extinct. By 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens was the only human species left on Earth. End of story. Southeast Asia was supposed to fit neatly into this timeline. Modern humans arrived around 50,000 years ago, island hopped through Indonesia, reached Australia, and that was that. There were no other human species in the region because the climate and geography made it impossible for them to survive there. Except the DNA from Callao Cave says that is not what happened. Homo luzonensis was already in the Philippines 67,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. That means they didn't arrive with the wave of modern humans spreading out of Africa. They were there first, and they weren't alone. In 2003, researchers on the Indonesian island of Flores found bones from another mysterious species called Homo floresiensis. Nicknamed the Hobbits because they stood only 3.5 feet tall, these humans survived on Flores until at least 50,000 years ago. Their brain size was comparable to a chimpanzee, yet they made sophisticated stone tools, hunted pygmy elephants, and controlled fire. In 2018, DNA analysis of modern Melanesian populations revealed traces of a third ghost population. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, something else. Something that contributed around 2% of the genome in people from Papua New Guinea and surrounding islands. And in 2021, researchers sequencing DNA from indigenous Filipinos found yet another genetic signature, a lineage that split from other human groups over 300,000 years ago and survived in isolation until modern humans arrived. Southeast Asia wasn't a blank canvas that Homo sapiens painted over. It was crowded. There were at least 4 distinct human species living in the region at the same time, possibly more. And when modern humans finally showed up, they didn't wipe them out. They absorbed them. The question is, how? How did all these different species end up in Southeast Asia in the first place? The answer involves something called Sundaland. During the last ice age, sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today. The shallow waters between mainland Asia and the islands of Indonesia were dry land. What we now see as separate islands, Borneo, Java, and Sumatra, were part of a massive continent twice the size of India. Picture it, a landmass stretching from modern-day Thailand all the way to Bali, rivers carved through valleys that are now underwater, forests covered plains that became the Java Sea, animals migrated across hundreds of miles without ever seeing an ocean. This landmass created a migration highway. Elephants, rhinoceros, and tigers moved freely between Asia and what would later become islands, and humans followed. They tracked prey across Sundaland, set up camps along riverbanks that no longer exist, and slowly pushed eastward into territory no hominin had ever seen. But Sundaland wasn't permanent. Every 100,000 years or so, the Earth's climate shifted. Ice ages came and went. Sea levels rose and fell by hundreds of feet. And every time the oceans rose, Sundaland shrank. Populations that had spread across the continent suddenly found themselves trapped on shrinking patches of land, cut off from the mainland as water filled in the gaps. Those trapped populations faced a choice: adapt to island life or die. Most died, but some adapted, and in doing so, they evolved into something new. Here is the twist. Different human species arrived at different times during different ice age cycles. Homo erectus, the first human species to leave Africa, reached Java 1.5 million years ago during a period of extreme low sea levels. Fossils prove it. For over 1 million years, they lived in isolation on what would become the Indonesian islands, evolving traits specific to their environment. Smaller bodies, different skull shapes, tool-making techniques that diverged from their African ancestors. Then the seas rose. Homo erectus populations on Java, Flores, and Sulawesi were cut off from each other and from the mainland. Each island became its own evolutionary laboratory. Hundreds of thousands of years later, during another ice age, another wave arrived. Possibly Denisovans based on genetic evidence, possibly an entirely unknown lineage. They crossed the newly re-exposed Sundaland, island hopped through Indonesia using primitive boats to cross the remaining water gaps, and eventually reached the Philippines. On Luzon, they found an environment rich with food, but completely isolated from the outside world. They settled, they adapted, and over tens of thousands of years, they became Homo luzonensis. Then the seas rose again. Luzon became an island. The population that would become Homo luzonensis was now completely cut off, evolving in total isolation for potentially 50,000 years or more before the next wave of humans arrived. By the time Homo sapiens showed up 50,000 years ago, Southeast Asia was a patchwork of human diversity. And because these groups had been separated for so long, they looked different, thought different, and carried wildly different DNA. But they could still interbreed, and they did, a lot. The DNA evidence shows that modern humans didn't just mix with one archaic group. They mixed with multiple groups across multiple locations over thousands of years. Some of those groups contributed large chunks of DNA. Others left only faint traces, ghost signals that show up in less than 1% of the genome. The mixing wasn't random. It happened in waves, in specific locations, under specific circumstances. When a small group of Homo sapiens reached an island and encountered an established population of Homo luzonensis or another archaic species, the two groups would have faced each other as potential threats, potential partners, or both. In some cases, conflict probably erupted. In others, cooperation made more sense, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and eventually, sharing genes. The hybrid children from these unions carried DNA from both parents. If those children survived and had children of their own, the archaic DNA spread through the Homo sapiens population. But not all archaic DNA survived. Most of it disappeared within a few generations because it provided no advantage or because it was actively harmful. Genes that caused developmental problems, reduced fertility, or made people more susceptible to disease were naturally selected against. The archaic DNA that did survive was there for a reason. And here is the part that changes everything. Those genes were not useless relics. They provided real, measurable advantages in the environments where people lived. In 2016, researchers discovered that a gene variant common in Tibetans, which helps them survive at high altitudes by regulating oxygen use more efficiently, came from Denisovans. Without that gene, Tibetans would struggle with altitude sickness, reduced fertility, and higher infant mortality on the Tibetan plateau. The Denisovan DNA gave them the biological tools to thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. In 2020, scientists found that indigenous Australians carry immune system genes from an unknown archaic human species. Those genes enhance the body's ability to fight off specific tropical parasites and diseases that are endemic to the region. Without them, early human populations in Australia would have faced significantly higher mortality rates from infections that their immune systems, evolved in Africa, had never encountered. In 2022, a study of Filipino genomes revealed that DNA from Homo luzonensis, or a closely related species, contributed genes involved in fat metabolism and energy storage. In a region where food sources fluctuate seasonally, where typhoons can destroy crops and fishing becomes impossible during monsoon season, the ability to store energy more efficiently during times of abundance would have been the difference between survival and starvation. Energy storage mattered, but the advantages went beyond physical traits. Some researchers now believe that archaic DNA also contributed to cognitive differences. In 2023, a study found that certain gene variants linked to pattern recognition and spatial memory, traits critical for navigation and tracking in dense jungle environments, appear more frequently in Southeast Asian populations and show signatures of archaic introgression. These look like cognitive adaptations. These were not random leftovers from ancient hookups. They were adaptive tools, selected and refined over hundreds of thousands of years by humans who had lived in Southeast Asia far longer than modern humans had existed as a species. The archaic humans who survived in the Philippines, Indonesia, and surrounding islands had evolved to thrive in that specific environment. Their bodies knew how to process the local food. Their immune systems knew how to fight the local diseases. Their brains knew how to navigate the local terrain. And when modern humans arrived carrying genetics evolved in Africa into a completely alien environment, they did not just replace the locals. They took the best traits and kept going. It was evolutionary theft on a massive scale, and it worked. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If interbreeding was so beneficial, why did the archaic species disappear? Why are we the only ones left? The truth is, we do not know. There are theories, but no definitive answers. Maybe modern humans had better social structures that allowed them to outcompete smaller populations. Maybe they carried diseases that archaic humans had no immunity to. Maybe the interbreeding itself caused fertility problems in hybrid offspring, leading to population collapse over time. Or maybe they did not disappear at all. Maybe we just absorbed them so completely that calling them extinct is the wrong word. If 5% of your genome comes from another species, are they really gone? Or are they still here, distributed across millions of people instead of concentrated in one population? The DNA suggests the latter, and it is forcing scientists to rethink what extinction even means. Here is what we know for certain now. Modern humans are not a pure lineage. We are a hybrid species. Our DNA is a mix of contributions from at least 4 distinct human groups, possibly more. Every person alive today, except for some populations in sub-Saharan Africa, carries genes from species that are supposed to be extinct. Southeast Asia is where the mixing happened most intensely. The region was a genetic melting pot, a place where human diversity reached its peak before collapsing into the single species we see today. The bones in Callao cave are just one piece of the puzzle. There are thousands of caves across Southeast Asia that have not been excavated yet. Thousands of potential sites where more bones, more DNA, more evidence of lost human species might be waiting. In 2023, researchers announced they had found stone tools in Sulawesi, Indonesia, that date back 200,000 years. No bones yet, but the tools prove someone was there. Someone who predates the arrival of modern humans by 150,000 years. In 2024, a team in Vietnam recovered a tooth from a cave in the northern highlands. Preliminary analysis suggests it belongs to a hominin species distinct from both Homo sapiens and known archaics. DNA extraction is ongoing, and in the Philippines, researchers have identified over 30 additional cave sites that matched the geological profile of Callao Cave. Any one of them could contain bones. Any one of them could hold DNA that rewrites the story again, because the story is not finished. Every new discovery adds complexity. Every genome sequenced reveals another ghost population. The more we learn, the more we realize how little we actually knew. For most of history, we told ourselves a simple story. Humans evolved in Africa, left, and conquered the world. We were special, unique, the pinnacle of evolution. But the DNA tells a different story. We did not conquer, we absorbed. We did not replace, we mixed. The traits that make us successful today, our immune systems, our metabolism, our ability to adapt to extreme environments, came from species we have spent centuries pretending did not matter. The bones in that Philippine cave waited 50,000 years to prove us wrong, and they did. The DNA inside them did not just rewrite one chapter of human history, it rewrote the entire book. The people walking around Southeast Asia today carry that book inside them, written in genetic code, passed down through generations that stretch back to a time when humanity looked very, very different. The question now is not whether we mixed with other species. The question is, how many more are we going to find? And what else are they going to teach us about who we really are?